trace the faith to a broken down television and put on the weather. And I've trained myself to give up on the past, cause I've frozen time between hearses and caskets. Lost control when I panicked at the acid test. I wanna get better.
Hello, welcome to Muscatine Viewpoint. You've got it tuned in to Muscatine Pound Water Digital TV. If you're subscribing, and then you've got it on Channel 9 or 709, or maybe you're tuning in live to the YouTube broadcast or watching this replay, but it's live right now, Wednesday at 5:30 on November 8th. We've got a great show for you. I'm Chad Bishop. I took a slight break, and now I'm back and excited to bring you the Muscatine Viewpoint, a show where we focus on allowing community members a chance to talk about and share their viewpoints and opinions with the community, and a chance for residents like yourself to get involved with local access television and now on our YouTube channel. If you want to be on the show or have a comment, there's forums for that, or just give me an email, and I'd be more than happy to have you come out and talk about your issues with respect to all of the great things happening in Muscatine. But before we get too far along, I do like to start every show with my Arby's grab bag here. Randomly, I have put a bunch of different topics in here, and if you haven't heard about Arby's, it's a really great place to eat. They've got good horsey sauce and curly fries. Let's see what comes out of the grab bag today. Completely random here. Let's see. This is a rare coincidence, folks. It's meant the election 2017 municipal election. Sounds like a good topic to me. So that's the Arby's grab bag of topics. You never know where it's going to happen. So we got a photo here. Hopefully I didn't overstep my bounds there. Yes, there we go. There's what do we have here? Four people. They seem to be very happy about something. Looks like Boonies, Boonies on the Avenue. Diana Broderson, I recognize her from the Community Y, and Kelsey Brackett, Diana Broderson, and Oz Malcolm. What do all four of those have in common? You may be asking yourself if you're sitting at home right now. I'll give you a moment to deliberate amongst your gathering. Well, they're all winners of the recent election. And I believe that's a nice moment that was captured, and that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. Election recap, talking about how things transpired and what's next. So let's see who we have here. Now, tonight's episode isn't as much about people as it is the topic. We're going to recap the election in a way that we can do in a more longer format way because of the fact that this is local access, non-commercial, non-partisan, whatever. It is actually. It's opinion-based. So let's see what we got here. We got Laura Legis. Is that how you pronounce your name?
Yes, it is.
So welcome to the show.
Yes.
I'm going to introduce you as among other things, but in this context, you were involved with Miss Broderson's campaign. Is that correct?
Yes, I was.
Tell us about that.
I was on Mayor Diana Broderson's campaign. I worked on marketing and outreach and helped with numerous different avenues of what we needed to do for the campaign.
What drove you to get involved in this particular election? What was your motivation, your background, or what?
Well, first of all, I do have a marketing background, among other backgrounds that I have in education-wise and experiences. And what I decided to do with this is, Diana and I have known each other a long time. We're good friends, and I know Diana is very passionate about our community, just like other people are passionate about our community in different ways. And I felt very driven that when she asked me to be a part of her committee, to help her with marketing and outreach, that I needed to say yes.
Okay, well put. And that gives the viewers at home a little bit of background with respect to your positions in the community. And Nick Salazar, very nice to meet you for the first time just now. However, I'd like you to talk just briefly about your background here in Muscatine.
All right, so my name's Nick. I am from Muscatine, where I was born and where I was raised. If you don't know me, about a year ago, we started an anti-hate, anti-violence campaign And that was in response to some graffiti that was on McKinley School. A swastika was spray painted on the side of the wall. And so what my thought was, the community response, there was a little knee-jerk reaction to it, but I thought maybe it was a little bit too modest in my view. I think when something like that happens, we should all be getting out in the streets and calling it out for what it is and standing up with the victims. So we started that. We had the march downtown. We had the rallies. And I'm also involved in LULAC, where LULAC is a national organization, and we have a council here in Muscatine. And what it is, it means the League of United Latin American Citizens. And what the goal is to improve the living conditions and the political influence for not just everybody, but people in the Latino community.
Okay.
And so with these issues that I'm working with, was something that Kelsey Brackett definitely had a deep understanding for. Kelsey can speak to people's problems. He understands people's, the trouble people have to go through across many social, economic backgrounds. So in my view, Kelsey is somebody who stood up for everybody, and which is why I thought this is the type of campaign that I can get behind and help with.
So you did help with the campaign, and was what you're mentioning there. And I believe he mentioned that you actually were considering running at some point. How did that? You changed your mind, obviously, but
yes.
So that was. Tell us about that.
So with everything that I was working on, like I said, over the summer, I wasn't really fixated on all the drama that was going on within our city government. But I think we all got our different opinions, but I think we can agree that there was definitely some type of government inefficiency. So if nobody was really going to step up to the plate to do it, ultimately it was something that I was considering doing. We actually had a committee formed. We had a lot of people rallying around these ideas. And then Kelsey actually came to me about, what goals that that we have in common, what can we work towards, and he was willing and open to sort of work with me on what I wanted to do, and so we found common ground. And I think the important thing was that it wasn't really about me, it wasn't really about Kelsey, it was about putting Muscatine first. Which is why I sort of just conceded and got behind Kelsey.
Yeah, if certain situations you could run against the opponent and split the votes, and essentially depending on what your ultimate goal was with respect to the at-large position,
yes,
maybe that wouldn't have been advantageous for your particular perspectives on our community government.
Yep.
So, okay, well, good. Nice to meet you, and thank you for your commitment to making Muscatine a greater place. And I think the name of your something to the effect of "Let's Stop Hate," right?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a lofty ambition, but it's not something easy to do. But you're taking a stance, a shot at it.
Right.
So good for you. And I'm all for stopping hate. It's a despicable emotion that usually doesn't work to your advantage. So let's talk about the election. Now you kind of know where these guys are coming from. Now I don't know if the word bias would come into play much, but you guys. Well, you do have a bias, right? I mean, you prefer to have one person win than the other. You have the right to prefer and vote for somebody. So don't get all shocking on me here. So what I want to talk about though is the election, just kind of play by play, as if we were doing it live. Now there might be somebody watching who doesn't know how the election panned out. I got news for you. We're going to tell you the results.
If they don't know by now, I don't know where they've been if you've lived in Muscatine for 24 hours.
Some people waited for this live episode, though. I mean, we've got some followers for the show.
I'm not watching though right now, Chad. So I don't know.
Well, the folks at home that don't know who won, you stay tuned. We're going to recap. Let's start with some of the results. Now, not every local election council member was up for office, but we had the 2nd Ward, 4th Ward, at large, and I'm missing one. Oh yeah, the mayor. Yeah. That one. Might have heard that was a contested situation. Now I happened to watch all the Channel 4, 6, and 8 news, and this is kind of a big deal in our Eastern Iowa area for a lot of reasons. It's a different situation that you don't run into much with respect to local government. So people besides Muscatine residents were watching, and wow, did we have one heck of a voter turnout. Let's kind of break these down. Let's start with an easy one here. The 4th Ward election results. Now, 4 people ran. Now, this is a little bit different because there wasn't an incumbent.
No, there was not.
So talk to me, you guys, about your thoughts. Now, basically, Nadine Brockert won, and she won by 48%, 49%. That's pretty significant, considering there were 4 opponents. But 4 people stepped up to the plate, and I believe there were more, just like maybe you were, Nick, as far as people were going to step up, but they realized that it's covered. And I think of all the contested rivalries, the 4th Ward seemed to be one of the most optimistic and exciting one to watch because they all seem to have honest intentions. And anybody that runs for local office gets my esteem regardless. What are your thoughts on how the 4th Ward went? Nadine Brockert, then Vance Crumley, and we had Larry Murray, and then, of course, Brian Freitag.
Well, all 4 candidates are truly passionate about different aspects or their community in Muscatine. And to run for a local city council, you have to be passionate about your community because it is as they say, sometimes the most thankless job. And I don't want to degrade that, but people go into public office not for their own self-interest usually, but it's because they want to do right for the community.
Okay.
It's a lot of work. It is a lot of work. It's a lot of work to run. It's a lot of work to, once you receive that office, 2 to 4 years. There's meetings all the time that you have to go to. You're involved in a lot of important things in the community when you're in that office. So with the 4th Ward, I felt that all 4 of the candidates had different aspects that could bring to the council.
Did you kind of lean towards anybody for any particular reason? Because that's kind of what I want to just analyze their results. So I'll kind of let him feel that while you kind of ponder that. But
as far as that goes, I don't live in the 4th Ward, so I couldn't vote in the 4th Ward. But so I'm off the hook there. And actually, since I didn't have to vote, I didn't have to think about that race. So I'm sorry, I'm not in the 4th Ward, but I didn't have to think about that race. So I can't really tell you where I was sitting at.
Kind of more of a self-involved thought process is what I'm
Yeah,
hearing.
it
You were
would
more
have been-
concerned about things that affect you specifically.
Exactly.
Just teasing you, obviously.
Really.
Where do you happen to live?
I live in the 3rd Ward.
Okay, so
Yeah, you didn't vote.
me too. I live in the 5th Ward, I think. So when I got up to my election ballot, I was like, what? That's it? I'm going to get 2 choices? I was hoping to have like a whole fun time there, I almost wrote some of the end just because... Anyway, you don't get a vote unless it's in your ward.
No, unless it's in your ward or at
Your
large.
ward wasn't represented either.
No,
Okay.
no.
So 4th Ward, we kind of, all 3 then had a kind of a non-biased approach to, but it did matter. Some of them I noticed from interviewing them had a little bit more aggressive approach, not regressive, but a little more literal approach to what they hoped to have happen if they were to win. And maybe others would have been a little more, I don't know, neutral. These words are kind of coming out of my mouth randomly.
There were some strong opinions from some on certain aspects. I think, just overview of candidates as far as I know, Nadine was very prepared with every time I ever was at any public meeting with Nadine, she was very prepared. The others were prepared too. I think that probably maybe just gave her the edge a little bit more. Also, she's the last name Brockert's very well known in the community, so that probably gave an edge also.
What do you think?
Just to kind of piggyback on it, when we look at the issues that ward is facing, I'm not surprised that there was a high voter turnout period down there.
Grocery store issues.
You got environmental issues down there.
There's always something down there,
with the air quality.
And with all that just kind of compounding each other, I want to thank everybody that ran down there, and because they all pretty much ran, on these issues. But I think, to agree, Nadine her message about it was much more clear, and it kind of resonated with a lot of people down there in the South End.
Now, Larry Murray, I believe, was the first to run. When I interviewed him, he mentioned that he wanted to step up to the plate. And at that time, he was the first one. So he applaud that because that's kind of, a time when he felt obligated, but also, not obligated, but a duty. And he was also, what I liked about his story, representing and trying to be a good role model for his son.
Yep.
And if nothing else, I think Larry Murray is happy that he ran.
Yeah, I saw Larry last night, and I said, well, Larry, you tried. He goes, it's okay. I'm good with how this turned out. I really am. It's good. And he goes, I stepped up to prove to my son that, sometimes you got to step up to do things. But I do know, besides Larry, I know Brian spent a lot of time door to door.
Door to door, yep.
He was very passionate in his mission, door to door. And I know that for a fact. I've had wonderful conversations with Brian. And I think Brian, today I mentioned to him maybe, when people start running for an office, maybe it might be now that you have some interest in this, that maybe there's a committee you could be on or be involved in some aspect in government and get yourself ready for the next election. Because, there will be an at-large seat that will come up at the next election.
Exactly. Now, I did happen to notice that Nadine was a woman. Do you think that factored into this current election? Because again, we're analyzing the results.
Current election.
This particular, at this exact moment in our political history, did gender become a factor? What are your guys' thoughts? I have an opinion, but maybe you guys can take that for me. Let me off the hook.
So falling back on what I just talked about, when we look at these issues, environmental, food desert, poverty, I don't think people care about whether if it's a woman or a man,
right.
or
okay.
If they're white or if they're brown. I think as long as their message is authentic and it is on point and it is clear, the people will vote for who they want.
So you don't think diversity was an issue? Because I did notice that the current council wouldn't have been getting an A+ rating for diversity, and I know diversity is a hot button issue, but it has to be brought up because at some point, if you're representing the people, it might be easier to represent a particular culture or gender or perspective, socioeconomic class, if you are a member of that. And I think that's why campuses and workplaces strive to have diverse.
Mm-hmm. Well, and there is a big movement right now going on called a 50-50, which is 50% women, 50% men running by 2020. Is a huge movement, Chad. And look at it's going to.
I can't even talk now because nothing that's going to come out of my mouth right now is going to help my.
But I think on this situation, I'll never be invited.
I need
back,
to get the Arby's grab bag.
Will
now.
I will never be invited back again. Anyway,
no, I mean I'm glad to hear about that because.
But no, there is a huge movement towards that because we do want to encourage women, just the same as we want to encourage minorities of all situations to run for office.
What I have down is exactly what you're saying. Is that shame on us then for not having women. I mean, there's been a few, but I think women got the point, which is, but not 50-50 by any means. And again, I like what you're saying though, because it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, but there are certain factors. And in this particular election, some members of the council were accused of gender discrimination, quite frankly, and they were accused of being an old boys club. If Nadine would have been in office, I don't believe that they would have been accused of being an old boys club. These are buzzword terms that I've read about in the media. Any thoughts? Can't talk. No, but I mean, I think if we had more women on the council.
Well, if there's more, I think if there would have been more gender representation on the council, possibly that would not have come up. I mean, I cannot speak on to that term about that, but I do think though that. And at this election time, for us in Muscatine, I don't know if it would have mattered if it was the right fit, if it would have been a woman, a man, again, black, white, whatever the case may be. I don't think that matters. I think it was what their message was, where their intents were, and what are they going to do to make a difference. Because the community is ready for a difference.
And I appreciate your viewpoint and perspective, and you folks at home, please feel free to come out on the show and express your opinions and viewpoint as well, because there isn't right and wrong. You have your opinion. I noticed and feel that being a female was very needed at some point in one of those members, and so I don't find it any surprise that we have an African American, a woman. We have a member of the Latino community with Santos already. We have got diversity now.
Well, and you know what? That's great, and there should be.
I mean, what's wrong with having a diverse council?
We should have a diverse council. Muscatine, Iowa is not just a community of just white people. It's a community of Hispanics, color.
Let me fact check
You
that.
know. No, we
sure?
are a community. No, we are a community of all different
can go.
nationalities. And when we have all these different nationalities, there should be representation.
I believe that's how. What do you think?
Well, I think when we look at Muscatine the last decade and we see who our elected officials were before these last couple elections, it was looking like an old box of crackers, to be honest.
Yeah, let's do it.
And I mean, but that's really what it was, and it wasn't really a fair representation of what the community actually had in it. Like what Laura said, we have a lot of Latinos. We have an influx of immigrants from Western Africa coming in. We have different interfaiths. We have different religions. I mean, this is what makes Muscatine a great place. And it's not fair to have, people who don't really represent our needs, people who don't really understand what we're talking about. And at the same time, though, we need those different types of people to run for office. We need somebody to vote for. And I think this election was, in recent time, it had a lot of people running for office. I think the last few elections that I was looking at, you had nobody even running against the incumbent.
Exactly, and that's a huge issue. There should always be somebody running against an incumbent. There should always be a challenge. That's what our whole country's been built on, based upon democracy and how we elect our officials and who represents us.
That's a great silver lining, don't you think, of their situation, is that I think Muscatine is going to have a very well represented election opportunities for years to come, based on the situation that we find out what happens if people don't run, that there can be issues with having your voice heard. The fourth ward, the only other thing I was wondering about as far as analysis is Mr. Brian Freitag was asked during the forum his thoughts on the Port Authority opportunities, and unfortunately he was the first one to get asked, and he said, I don't know. And I know he felt bad about that, and you shouldn't if you're watching, Brian, but there's a learning curve to being a politician, and you can't be expected to know everything about every issue right out of the gates, because when I was interviewing Scott Knapvig, for example, it took him a couple years just to get his handle on all the nuances of what it's like to be a council member with your TIF grants and your ordinances and your zoning laws. But having said that, you have to vote based on something, and as far as analyzing goes, that didn't cost him the election by any means, but I know he felt bad about that, and everybody I've talked to says he shouldn't have.
Well, and that happens. There's a lot to know. I mean, I worked in government for close to 20 years, and each government organization works just a little bit differently, and each community is different. No community is set up exactly the same, no matter what. And so what goes on in different communities, and when people run for election, not to know every little detail that should be, it does happen. It does. I don't know if that was what took, that edge or not for him. I don't know, and I don't think it would have.
He went door to door, and, I mean, he really gathered the opinion of his ward.
He did.
I mean, he literally knew what they were saying because he was hearing it to his ears.
He did.
He
met every single person. He went door to door. He was very passionate about it. And I will say, in this election process, being on Mayor Berterson's campaign, I did get to meet a lot of, deal with a lot of the different candidates in different ways at different events, meet and greets. And all of the Fourth Ward members, they're all wonderful people, and they all have great things that bring to the community.
So Nadine Brockert, Fourth Ward, won by 298 votes. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a huge number compared to usually, and that's 48% of the population in the Fourth Ward voted her in. And thanks to all four of those candidates. Vance Crumley's story is a little different because he originally was running for mayor and then literally took out of his petition for mayor and ran for Fourth Ward as an attempt to kind of ease himself into things. So he might have mixed emotions about that, but thank you for all four of you candidates for running. And thanks to Bob Bynum, who unfortunately felt it in the community's best interest not to run this year based on some health concerns. So it would have been interesting to have him run as well. I'm sure he would have, because all the current council members have a passion and commitment to the same things that the new people will have, which is making the community better. I haven't met a council member yet who wasn't running for the right reasons. It's a small town Muscatine environment, so I've yet to hear anybody say too much negative. I'll stop talking about that issue because I'd like to move on to the second ward now. There's no script to this. Maybe there should be. Second ward analysis. Now, the second ward, that must not be a biggest ward. Now,
no, it's not.
Can you put up that other photo, Alex? Oh, there we go. So according to the internet, which don't always believe what you hear on the internet, please. But anyway, this was from Oz Malcolm's Facebook page. He won by 481 to 188, pretty handedly. What's the percentage on that? Didn't you bring your 71.15%?
I'm sorry, I didn't print it all out. I'm sorry, I didn't print it out.
71% is a smack down there. That's not a political term, by the way. Don't look that up. But no, this isn't a funny matter. It's just we're reflecting on that, and I want to know what you guys thought about the second ward, and or any thoughts about the candidates with respect to the opportunities that we have in the future. Looking forward to their representation of the second ward, past or present. What are you thinking about that? I know you're not from the second ward, but did you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, so from the outside looking in, just like the other wards, you had two people who were, talking about issues that were like night and day.
Yeah.
One guy didn't really have much to offer. The other guy had, was always talking about many issues across, many different types of people in his ward. Especially within the business part of that ward. That's the business area. And I think Oz has a good understanding of what it takes to run a small business. During the debates, he had positive attitudes towards, the issues and really ran a positive campaign as opposed to his opponent.
I did happen to notice that there was an ad in the paper or something. I don't know where I found this, but I saw an ad for that Mr. Ruwalt, I believe, put in there. I don't even know because I didn't see if it said paid by Ruwalt's committee.
Did.
Was it okay? Because that's important. If it's not paid for the particular politician, you've got to be mindful of that because it may or may not represent their views. But I did notice that negative ad, and I'm just saying, oh man, that doesn't sound like you think was the way to go for winning this particular campaign.
No, and especially when, just like the other words, people have issues. People don't want to hear, they don't want to hear the mudslinging. They don't want to hear the drama. They don't want to hear the gossip. It's something that people have been experiencing the last few years already. And I think Oz is pretty much that the key to stopping all that, and to sort of, and it showed in the voting. People, Oz won by a landslide, and people, that was pretty much a clear message that we're done with the nonsense and the drama.
So, as a campaign manager of sorts, well, not of sorts, of reality, what do you think about the second ward race?
Well, the second ward race certainly was an interesting race. You have someone who was born, raised here, moved away, came back, Mr. Raywalt. Served on council one term. Many times the incumbent usually can get reelected. He did not with this. I think Oz came in with a very fresh, different appearance to things. I know Oz was very active with being door to door himself until he was gone with his emergency management. He is very involved in the Salvation Army, and I know he was gone for weeks in Florida due to disasters there, and he came back. He had a great group of people working with him, and they were very much, though, hands-on, door-to-door, talking to people and what are their issues. And I know he sees the issues and he understands issues in this community. His ward area is a unique ward. It's got downtown business. It's got some of the historical homes. It also has some areas that we've had some issues with shootings and other gang issues. And those are things that are very much a concern to us.
Now, I didn't get a vote in the second ward, but if I was in the second ward, I would have preferred what the fourth ward had going on with respect to maybe another option altogether. That's just my opinion because I wasn't sure that I completely would have voted for Oz, regardless of my. Well, no, that's just my opinion. I went.
Well, that's your opinion. We can all have our opinion here.
I mean, I'm just saying. Do you think that there might have been room for maybe Oz's approach? Because like you said, they were night and day. But it almost feels like there's a third or fourth way of going about running that particular ward or that particular approach. I remember Oz saying it's all about service, customer service, and he referenced the gas station attendant during his forum. And so that was what he's running on, is that he's going to serve the people. So you ask him to do something, he's going to do it. To the extent that he can, might find that to be a little bit harder, easier said than done. But so you guys found it like you're very happy to have Mr. Malcolm win, not because Rewalt didn't, because you feel he's going to be a great candidate.
Yes.
No, I feel Oz is a very great candidate. I fully trust that he's going to do everything in the best interest for his residents. And I hope each and every one of his residents in his ward do get the opportunity to have more conversations with him. I know he is very much in favor of events like Coffee with the Mayor and other outreach, and I foresee
love
that he
coffee.
would do that.
No, actually, I stopped drinking coffee, but it is healthy, and I recommend drinking it with the mayor, with your mom, with your son, if he's old enough, because life is precious. That's what your point was, wasn't it?
Well,
that
yeah,
people should
yeah,
drink coffee with each other?
Well, yeah, but it is my point. The point is, though, that those kind of outreach programs are very valuable to the communities because they do allow for people in a less stressful situation. If you've ever been to a council meeting and you got to go stand up there for you want to, you got an issue in your neighborhood, you want to talk about it, you go there, you get 3 minutes. It can be very intimidating to someone who is not a public speaker.
So what cost Mr. Rewalt?
It's Rewalt.
What cost Mr. Rewalt the election, not the negative ad specifically, but in general? I'm hearing you guys kind of allude to this situation, but the city council, it almost was like you were voting, it wouldn't matter who ran against Mr. Rewalt. To some people, I think for some people, it seems like it was, we want the council out. Not for everybody, but did you feel that some people were just kind of fed up with the current council?
I think the situation is that, and with Rewalt, he did make a comment in his forum, and I believe he sent out a letter that he apologized publicly about maybe coming off rude with people or not listening. And, that certainly, maybe that viewpoint was out there in his ward.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I mean, he did say that. I don't live in his ward. I didn't receive the letter. I did hear about the letter. But I do think that might be very well some of the issues and how he, came off with some of his constituents.
And I agree with that. And he didn't just lose because of the letter or anything. He didn't really come out and offer anything else. And just with the stuff that he said in the past, it's been pretty questionable. About people having hidden agendas, or he used to use the nonpartisan government topic to keep, ideals out, or, other political matters out of the government or the overall discussion. And so that when people see that you have nothing to offer, your inefficiency is showing, within your seat, people voted for the other person.
Well, that is the second ward results then, and I'd like to thank both candidates for their efforts, and specifically Mr. Rewalt's services have been appreciated, and I'm sure that all these candidates, because they are good people, will continue to serve the community from different opportunities, because just because you're not a city council member does not mean that you can't have a profound influence on your local community. That leads us to the at-large vote. I got to vote in on that one, so that's always fun. But at large, everybody got a vote. So we had Mr. Scott Natvig, who was the incumbent, 4 years.
No, this is his second term.
8 years.
So he's been there 8 years.
This Mr. Natvig knew what was going on, and I believe nobody will contest that he did a very thorough job of learning what it was like to be a council member. And as you mentioned, usually an incumbent can win because they've got the job on their resume. It literally says that they have experience in that exact job, whereas a new person may or may not have any experience. But let's look at the results there. If you're just tuning in and didn't see the election results, I guess some people might not even know. Kelsey R. Brackett, he chose to put his middle initial in there. You know what his middle initial stands for, right?
No, I don't. I don't know Kelsey's middle name.
No. Fill me in.
Really? You voted for him blindly? I don't know who you voted for.
I
think he needs to be transparent about your middle initial. We'll see if he's watching because I'll help Facebook message him.
Yeah, he might. He might be watching.
Should we take some guesses?
I don't know. Would it be Richard?
Ronald? Reagan? Ronald Reagan? I'm sure he's a supporter.
Kelsey Ronald. I don't think that goes well. Kelsey Richard goes better. I'm one of these that has to say the whole name out with the last name and make sure it all sounds right. But
I don't know. I think we've got it. We found some real deep issues here on this.
Yeah, we really have here at the at-large.
He was up against Carrie Dennison and Scott Natvig. So the winner of the last night's election, according to that photo I just saw, was Kelsey R. Brackett We are bracket, hear us roar. All right. Carrie Dennison, no middle initial. That could have been it right there.
I don't know.
I think a lesson to be learned in the at-large is always run with your middle initial and middle name in the ballot.
I'll
think we can all
remember
agree
that.
with
I'll
that.
remember that in the future.
He won by 45% of the vote, 1,855 people. Carrie Dennison was third with 19%, and Scott Natvig got 1,439 votes with 35%. So here's what I kind of did with that is, I might be wrong, but it kind of did seem like there was two sides of this issue. And so what I'm seeing is that the people voted 65% in favor of a certain perspective, and 35% voted for Mr. Natvig, who may have represented another. And I know it's not all that black and white, but this is a town divided, in my opinion. Not anymore. But so Carrie and Kelsey could have potentially split the votes a little bit, but it didn't seem to matter. What are you guys' thoughts on how the at-large race panned out?
Well, I know all three members of this group also, and I think overall, again, like we talked about with the Raywald in the second ward, I think people were ready for a different change. There might have been that they were ready for a different change. I can say that I have worked with Scott personally over the years, and I know Scott was always very thorough in understanding what was going on when dealing with issues on council. So I think he was a very informed person as representing of council. I think though that it was an opportunity of a new opportunity to come in board. I think Kelsey brought something new to the table that people are interested in.
He is a pro mullet. But what I think he brought to the table is a sense of humor about things that, and like you mentioned, we're not interested in the drama.
Yeah.
And I know when he was deciding whether to wear a Hawaiian shirt to his interview with me or a polka dot shirt, I knew he got that message, which was, this is serious, he's taking it seriously, but let's relax a little bit and think about what's best for the community. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, just to add on to that, when he reached out to me over the end of the summer, and we met to talk about how we can move forward, he was wearing his Hawaiian shirt. And, I was just kind of nervous because I was like, I wonder how this is going to pan out. Well, I walk in there and he is wearing a Hawaiian shirt, and which kind of really just set the tone and the aesthetic with the way he was going to run his campaign.
Okay.
As far as Scott Natvig, I don't know him personally, but from what I hear, that he's a really, really good guy. I hear that he is, and from what I see and hear and what I read about him, he looks like he's very, very much qualified for the job. Having said that, based on what's been happening, I think, like what Laura said, the Kelsey bracket was sort of that fresh breath of air that people were looking for. Nothing against Scott or anybody or Carrie, but I think as far as like that fresh breath of air and somebody who understands what's going on and somebody who has the guts to stand up for the people, Kelsey was that guy that people voted for.
With 45% of the vote, do you think that Kelsey and Carrie might have split the vote a little bit, or were they running on different enough platforms that that wasn't quite the case?
That could have been split more than it already was. And I think that Carrie came in very, and actually I went to both meet and greets. I mean, I've been to the circuit here.
That's why I'm glad you came out.
I've been to the circuit
you came,
here.
Because you've been following this election.
I have been. This is like the first time in 20 years I've gotten to participate in the back scenes of things like this. But I know Carrie was very passionate about the issues that council's gone through, and was very, and I don't know if that made a difference or not of things or not, and how that came off. Carrie is a great guy and is in conversation. I think that he could have brought some things to the table, but again, I think Kelsey just gave a different perspective to it. It was fresh ideas without coming. And he's not abrupt about it. And I think that might have been where abruptness might have been the issue with that.
Some of politics is in the charisma and likability.
Yeah.
I mean,
and some of it is.
I'm not reading into that, but there is a little bit of that too. At some point, you do kind of just vote for who you've got a gut feeling about.
Yeah. And to add some more to it, there was a sentiment across town just to vote the council out. And I think Carrie was able to sort of harness that, and he did well with it. He was able to get a lot of people to vote for him on that message. But from a broader point, not everybody in Muscatine was looking for that sentiment. People wanted actual change. Sure, we can vote the council out, but for the most part, people voted for Kelsey, the mayor, and Oz for real change, and not just to vote these people out and walk away. Then
Yeah,
I'm
no,
done
they
here.
they came out in droves. People were in lines yesterday to vote, and for us to have a city election only and be in lines, that says words that we can't even talk about because it's like humongous, just a great response.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you were Kerry's campaign manager, I'm hearing you two kind of mention that maybe making the issue about the way the council ran things might not have been the most effective. To me, it was just kind of sounded like we're going to have a contentious situation for 2 years if one of the incumbent or one of the newly elected council members has got kind of a chip on their shoulder about the current issue. Because long story short is you have to work together on the council. There has to be group cohesion, or everything's going to be an argument, like every little thing.
Well, and there has to be, and in my career now, I do go to numerous communities and work with different city councils, and I can say that is one thing that you can always tell if there's a good group working well together, and if it isn't, you can tell it just immediately because the process, nothing gets accomplished, and so that might have been some of the thought to it. I think Kerry, and again, and I don't want to speak in the lines because, Kerry's thoughts to this might be something totally different than I'm coming from, and he'll let me know because he's probably watching.
We'll
I'm
have
sure
him
he's
out
probably watching, or he'll be like commenting on the YouTube about
He's
this.
going to tell you his middle name if nothing else.
Well, then we all know. I will never share my middle name, so there. I'll always use the initial, by the way.
Is it an L? Like
No,
LLL?
it's a J.
Like
so.
that one girl, Laverne and Shirley, got the little L monogram?
No, I'll get one of those for
Can I
my
just
sweater.
give you an idea?
No,
I
there
just
we
got an
go.
idea for Christmas
There you go.
that
Thanks.
you can get me. I
Yeah,
don't
you
give
want-
Christmas gifts. I receive them, though. No, I don't. I'm trying to keep it light, too, because I have an issue about Mr. Natvig. Man, what a great service he did to the community. And I know that he is of retirement and retired, and so he mentioned that if he doesn't get elected, it's not the end of the world. He'll continue to contribute in all the great ways he does. I'm sure he would have rather won just because there were some things that were still kind of in progress. But why do you think, I think I have a feel for what the biggest problem was with this election. Wasn't the mayor situation was really why some people were voting Natvig versus Bradvik or Natvig versus Dennison. It had nothing to do with Natvig that I'm aware of because all of you guys agreed that he accomplished a lot of things. But at some point, voting to impeach the mayor and being the judge, jury, and prosecutor, if I had to point to one thing that was hard for the public to understand, and then to have the district court kind of agree, and then to have us realize that was kind of a waste of time, in hindsight, maybe not at the exact moment, that seems like it'd be hard for a current council member to really explain in a way that people were convinced of.
I think it would
Did you
be
hear a convincing argument to why that happened?
I think it would be very hard to have that discussion and to be able to come out and say. I think that there was a point in time they couldn't really talk about it because a legal stance, and then when it came back in the district court came out of, the ruling from the judge, I think that maybe made some decisions for people.
And the justification was that they were following the rule of the law, which it must be true, but that they didn't have a choice. But it seems like that's still, that's what I hope to have some people on next week's show or future episodes to kind of address that, because that was a little bit confusing to the public. And if you weren't already confused about things, that particular issue, I don't think they had enough time to really clarify before the election happened. And that might have affected Mr. Natvig's particular opportunity to
I
win.
also think, though, that when a council impeaches a mayor, again, I don't know all the things that go in and out of all this and why or whatnot, but what I did read and did understand in the pieces of it, it is questionable to me is that something, though, that most councils would even do?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah.
I mean, Muscatine's made history
Yeah.
in this case.
We'll be fleshing that out for a couple more months, and then hopefully we can get back to worrying about potholes and things, because there is one on Hershey No, but usually that's what we're worried. Stuff like that. That's why we don't always run for
Potholes,
office.
did my trash get picked up?
Yep.
You know, those things. Yeah.
Those are the things that really matter. If you're driving around drinking your coffee with the mayor and you bump a pothole, you got spill
Yeah,
all over.
let me tell you
You're
about
late
that.
for work. You
Let
get
me tell you
fired.
about that.
You
You know, when you're driving around, hit a
Whatever.
pothole. You know.
Well, that concludes our episode. No, just kidding. We got one more race to talk about here. The mayoral race. Is that how you say that?
The mayoral.
Yeah. The mayor race was contested by Mr. Charlie Harper and Diana
Oh, please.
Broaddus?
Broderson. My goodness.
I just teased. So she's a familiar face in the local media, and she ran for office 2 years ago and was elected into our mayorship, and so now she was running again, basically the incumbent.
Nice.
And like you mentioned, usually the incumbent has a great shot of winning because they've got 2 years of history behind them. Now, the backstory of that is that I believe Mr. Dwayne Hopkins, well, I know, was running for mayor and then decided not to run, which opened up the field again. So the big question was, who's going to run against Diana once we found out she was running? And then Mr. Hopkins was already slated to run, decided not to for reasons that he's been public about. And I believe there was kind of a choosing part. Now, we don't have a Republican and Democrat party per se, but it sounded
No.
like some people were in charge of deciding on Mr. Harper. How does that work? Any thoughts on that? Because anybody can run for mayor, but it seemed like there was kind of an overarching authority. You got any thoughts on that?
There is
Because she's
definitely.
brewing something there.
Well, I don't think they're in back rooms picking a candidate, smoking their cigars, but I definitely do think that there is some type of organizational structure when we talk about these mayor races. And when we talk about the issues that we're seeing in the government efficiency, we've had very low voter turnout. We've had very low civic engagement. And what that means is not many people are going to run for mayor. Like she said earlier, when you go to city council meetings, you feel like you're intimidated. It's just all that together. People don't feel like they even know how to run. They don't even know where they have to go to. There's no real guidance on it. And that's the type of thing that, some of these organizations or special interests hope happens. That way they can sort of coordinate their guy within their, the structures within the background of everything.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on how the opposition, if you will, came about their selection process? And
Well, I do know that a lot of times in communities, leaders, different leadership roles will say to someone they think is a good candidate, is this something you're interested in? And I've actually had someone say to me once that sometimes you don't pick your time when you're going to run for election, it may pick you. And this might have been an opportunity that, some people in leadership in the community said to Charlie, this is a great opportunity, run for mayor.
I heard he was the fourth choice.
I don't know. I've been busy working
That's
on
kind of a rumor.
Diana's campaign, so I really didn't have time to go check that out. But I do,
But that's the reason I asked you that's because that doesn't make any sense. Like, who's choosing? Like that's what you're saying. Is there some sort of hierarchy choosing people? I don't understand that. That's how a local mayor race works.
well,
But it felt. I think somebody was chosen, the chosen one,
the chosen one.
based on 4 other people decide no. It is a small town, so
Yeah,
man,
yeah.
I think we would have been very lucky to have Charlie Harper as mayor. What do you think?
Well, I know
Assuming
Charlie.
assuming your
Okay.
candidate wasn't running.
Okay. Well,
Let's just pretend
let's just.
she moved to Arizona
Okay,
because she
okay.
liked the weather and whatnot.
All right, so first of all, I know Charlie, and Charlie was very supportive of years when I had my past career, and actually, I've bought numerous bicycles from Charlie, and his family. So it's not that Charlie, I have an anti-Charlie Harper thing at all by any means on that. I think Charlie, as far as was he the best fit candidate? I think that, he probably could have been okay as mayor. Probably could have been. But obviously, where my vote went, obviously, by now, because I've worked with Diana's campaign. But
I thought I heard that that's a show just about like opinions, but Jane Duffa was asked to run.
oh,
Wouldn't that have been juicy? Gender bias begot. Is that a word?
No, I've never
But
heard
she
that.
wasn't able to run at this particular time. Because anyway, it's just the point is you want to have people run for mayor that can really be positive role models and ambassadors,
Yeah,
regardless
we
of
do want the mayor position is an ambassador.
Role.
It is an important role, and you know what? It's not just that you cut ribbons, even though that's been the rumor of discussion.
Not with that scissors they have. The chamber needs to get a new pair. Those things are hard to cut with. See, they're laughing because they know how many times you have to redo that photo.
Yes, yes. So it is about.
That's why it's not about cutting ribbons.
It is, well, it's not just about cutting ribbons and shaking hands and always greeting. Our mayor is, you know, again, when they're running that council meeting, and I've been to council meetings, not to say here in Muscatine this, but I've been to council meetings in other places that their mayor has no control of their council meeting, and it goes on until 11 o'clock at night. I mean, you know, so that's important.
Like the moderator.
Yeah, it's a moderator. It's running the meeting. That is the mayor's meeting. That's what they do. But also, mayors, you know, set the tone of a community too, just like a council sets a tone. And I think what's really exciting when seeing what's going on, that our new elected council, there was a picture of them together in the beginning of this show. I have yet to see, in the time that I've been back in Muscatine for over 10 years, anything like that.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen very often, I can tell you that. Last night, I was at Diana's party, and after their parties ended, they all came down to hers and congratulated her.
Oh, great. Everybody wins regardless if you're pro-Muscatine in the election, that's for sure.
Yes.
I mean, you know, the mayor as an ambassador in ribbon cutting, I think the mayor has a great opportunity to represent Muscatine as a whole. And so I think it's not, I think the ribbon cutting, it is a ribbon cutter because that's an important role. You are, in my opinion, the face of Muscatine, the go-to person. So when we're at Iowa meetings or when China's considering coming over here, you're the person as the mayor that they will seek to shake the hand with and whatnot. And that's a huge role, regardless of your actual power.
The one thing I do want to say, and again, like I said, yes, I know, we all know I helped with Diana's campaign, but Diana truly does want to hear from her constituents and her people, and I know she gets phone calls and messages and emails, and she responds back to them. I can tell you I've overseen her social media for the last few months, and she answers her messages very frequently.
You voted for Diana then?
Obviously, you know that. And I think I know who you voted for, too. Because you wouldn't tell me yesterday, so there, I already know.
I voted for Charlie Harper, but you have to pick somebody, and
yeah, that's all right.
so I like talking with you guys.
I guess we'll still do that project we're working on anyway.
We're not divided.
Yeah.
A town divided.
No.
I'm getting nervous now. It came out of it. No, but anyway, everybody realizes that. Now, here's my thing about the mayor situation is that I would like to propose that I think what's going to happen is that we need to really consider what kind of mayor do we want to have, a strong mayor or a weak mayor. And I thought that someone was down-talking the weak mayor, strong mayor concept, but that is literally what it says in the Iowa Code with respect to our mayor. It's a weak mayor or strong mayor. You can choose as a city which code you want to follow. Strong mayor would have more of a voting type situation. Weak mayor is more of the clerk of the council. What I would propose is that, as an option for mayor, is that we have a stronger mayor opportunity where the mayor, he or she, gets a vote. Right now, he or she gets a veto vote. And I ask you, what kind of power of a veto did she have if she couldn't even veto her own motion to impeach? We have a motion to impeach the mayor. All in favor, say aye. Would you like to veto that impeachment? And the mayor did not, for some reason, have that authority. So I'm suspicious that the veto power is not real.
I think it depends on without having it all, without me having all the details in front of me, I think it may have to do, from my background in government and whatnot of knowing, I think it may have to do with the type of vote it was. And because of that being that vote, what it was on the table, she could not.
Don't you find that noteworthy that you couldn't even veto your own impeachment motion, though? Because they still could have, by a majority vote, unvetoed her veto. But, well, my point isn't that I think the mayor should have a vote in council if possible. But here's the problem. You'll have potentially ties. There'll be 4 and 4. There'll be 8 votes. And so I think a lot of times cities put the veto option for the mayor when they know that they're going to need a tiebreaker. If we let our mayor have a vote, then that mayor is going to have to agree to work twice as many hours, so from 10 to 20. And I know the mayor's put in more time than that, but the point is, when you decide to run for mayor, if we have a strong mayor, commit to working as many hours as the council members do, because you're going to have to know what you're talking about. Pay them twice as much, so from $7,500 to $15,000. And when we do have a tiebreaker, if we ever did, let's use our online opportunities to have online voting referendums, because it's so easy to do polls now. Back in the old days of like 7, 8 years ago, you had to have a referendum. It was a big deal.
Yeah, it's
Why
very
can't we solve
expensive.
tiebreakers by saying, hey, people, what do you think? Should we have checkers or not?
Everyone in the audience at City Council, hit your A, B, C. What do you think? There you
Exactly.
go.
What I mean,
There you
I believe that's legitimately how we can let the people. Some of these candidates said the people have voted us in, or the people have decided. How do you know if you're the 4th Ward district? Maybe, but how do you know if you're at large or the mayor? Yeah, 3 people might have said that they're in favor of pit bulls, and nobody said they weren't. So the people have spoken. No, the people didn't speak. The people that were really angry about it spoke. Let's find out for sure. In this vote, I guess I can't really stand up on my soapbox because the people did kind of speak.
Yeah, they did, by the way.
I don't really have like a real strong ending to that on this issue. You haven't talked for a while. I know
Yeah, please, because we're going to end up in some argument sooner or later, and that's all right. But
Yeah.
Yep.
But anyway, what are your thoughts on how the mayor race shook out, and your thoughts on the future for our elected officials?
So Charlie Harper, it's kind of similar to the Scott Natvig race in bracket. Charlie Harper, I don't know him personally, but I known him all my life because I lived in Muscatine all my life. He has contributed a lot to Muscatine. From what I hear, he's a great guy and definitely qualified to do the job. Unfortunately for Mr. Harper, with everything that was going on, he was associating himself with some of the people that were, kind of within this controversy. I think I even read somewhere that he has even endorsed and doubled down on some of the actions that, that have been taking place in Muscatine within this controversy. So, and I think it's just the same sentiment as it goes with the Nat Big, with Ray Walt, that people are kind of sick of the same, and the same old, business as usual, and that's sort of what Charlie Harper represented.
And that's I will echo that and say I believe it wasn't about Harper or Broderson for the mayor race anyway. It was almost just like which side of this debate do you fall on? That's why I called it the town divided or a town united. I didn't come up with the last part, by the way. Santos helped me with that.
Well,
it was 2 issues, wasn't it?
Well, it wasn't. Well, it could be, but I think people, like I said earlier, people didn't go out and vote just to get the council out, just out of despite or just out of anger. I think that people really want to make real change, and we sent a clear message doing that. 25% voter turnout, unofficial numbers.
That's a lot, isn't it?
It is a lot.
And I
It
think,
is.
and I
For
think,
municipal.
yeah, and I think the mayor issue, I think it brought a spotlight to what's going on, and I think people paid attention, and now they're engaged and they're starting to notice.
Great. Yeah.
They're starting to wake up, and they're seeing how the status quo is being protected, and people came out and they sent a message that we're not going to do the same old, and we're going to. In the next election, we're going to come out, and the one after that, and we're going to fight for real change.
2,478 people voted for Mrs. Broderson. 1,666 voted for Mr. Harper. I don't know, there's some weird 666 thing going on there, but that is huge. I did the math earlier, and then I forgot what it was, but 25%. I know last year's election for mayor, I believe the total number of people that voted for the mayor was about 1,500 total.
Yeah, there was hardly anybody.
So
We
what a great thing, though. We, like you just said it perfectly, the community's engaged now in things they didn't
engaged.
know that they could be. We're probably going to end up having one of the most proactive communities, not for a couple years, though. We got a little bit of a speed bump here because there's a little, I don't know, we're still some wounds.
Right, and I think what
and
this is.
Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
So I think what this was, it was a quick win for the people, and whatever your views are, it doesn't really matter that if you're engaged and if the majority of the people speak, the government does work. You don't have to sit on your apathy. You don't have to sit in despair. If we all come out and vote for what we believe in and stand up for it, it is possible.
Now that reminds me about future political aspirations for both of you too. Because you're very well spoken with respect to your message. Do you have any plan? How are you planning on contributing to the community within the next couple years, or do you plan on maybe running in the future?
So I'm going to continue what I'm doing. I'm going to keep fighting against hate, keep fighting against violence. We're going to stand up for the Latino community. We're going to stand up for all the communities. And really just keep doing what I'm doing, playing it by ear. And if an opportunity comes up later in the future, and we'll just see how everything is, and maybe, I'll consider running for some type of office. But until then, I'm still going to keep organizing around all this energy that was created and sort of mobilize people to these issues.
Wow, well put. And I appreciate your concern for the community and for helping stop some of the negative things happening. Yeah, and what about you? Any thoughts along those lines of how you plan on contributing to the Muscatine community in the future?
Well, I think I contribute a lot of things, actually, Chad. I belong to, I don't know how many boards.
Yeah.
I'm like, geez.
Well, just go ahead and list them.
I know. I'm on the Salvation Army board. I'm on the MCC Alumni board, which helps to give money for some awesome things for the students here. Numerous different things like that. Volunteerism. I'm a very big volunteerism person, and I think people need to volunteer in their community and take part. And there's always something that is of your interest. You can always make something better in a community. And so those are my roles right now with things. Taking a deep breath now that the campaign is over and for Diana. And I am not sure yet exactly where I lie in my future.
You're all
if
fired
anything.
up, though.
I am fired
you
up.
made a difference in the community.
It was huge.
Above and beyond what you already were doing.
It's huge.
You were managing some important things, and now you've created... I think you guys are celebrating, though. You two.
Yeah.
Now, not every... You mentioned a win for the people. Mm-hmm. Do I count as a person? Or, what do you say to the people that didn't vote for... I mean, did they lose? Because that's kind of offensive slightly if you... depending on how you take what you said.
So, our primary or general election turnout is usually 60 and 70%. I think that difference was... Yesterday was 25%, so I think that difference, those people aren't engaged in local politics. Those people think that at the federal level, real change can happen. And what this proves, and what this election proved was that if people do come out and vote, that we can make real change, because it's not going to happen at the federal level. It's not going to happen at the state level. It's going to happen at the local level, where we have real access to our representatives. They could just be down the street. We can just call them. We might be able to see them at the coffee shop.
Yeah, I mean, if you're sitting at home, it's like July 1st, and all of a sudden you feel like you're in World War II. That's because we had some fireworks going on, and that's the backyard change that local politicians, like council members, affect. Not that you shouldn't have a federal vote, but you're right. As far as what literally affects you on a daily basis, our local government really has profound influence.
It does. Your local government is the most effective to most people's lives every day.
So we're running out of time, but I think we had a great discussion. What do you think? No, just kidding. I would like to give... I would like your opinion on that.
You really want to.
But I do want to make sure that if you were slightly offended or emotionally inspired by the words or opinions that you heard on this channel, this is a local access channel. It sure as heck is not my show. It's not your show. It's not her show. It might be his show, but we'll talk about that later. But the point is, this is the People Show, and it's an opportunity for the People Show. See, now I'm saying it. You can come out and be on the show, and I would love to have anybody come out, and we'll be rotating hosts even. This is the Muscatine Viewpoint, not mine. And I'd like to, maybe next week, we'll see if we can kind of get some different perspectives, because you guys did a great job of giving me an opportunity to recap the election.
All right.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
So that concludes this episode of Muscatine Viewpoint. I'd like to thank you for watching and tuning in. We will continue to talk about local topics. I believe we'll talk about things like the Pearl Progress, the Muscatine riverfront improvements. We can talk about dog parks, all sorts of great things. The show is intended to be ultimately positive, but the point that makes this different than some shows is it's opinion-based. you're going to hear some things that may or may not be completely factual, but by allowing people to express themselves and to communicate what they feel to be factual or their beliefs and emotions, I believe that can help make Muscatine a great place and keep people from having these kind of gossipy approaches to communicating. Let's really be transparent and open. And this show is one of many forums for that. And so please continue to watch, and we appreciate your feedback, and consider coming out to the show because, again, this is all about making Muscatine a great place to live. So tune in next time, and we'll see you then.